In the dim flicker of a single lantern, casting long shadows across the weathered walls of a remote cabin on the edge of the Montana frontier, Elena stood frozen, her wedding dress still stained with the dust of the long journey from Boston. Her husband of mere hours, the man she had crossed an ocean to marry through letters filled with promises of a new life, lay motionless on the rough-hewn bed, his chest no longer rising with the labored breaths that had plagued him since their hurried ceremony in town. The fever had come on swift and merciless during the wagon ride home, turning his skin ashen and his eyes glassy with unspoken regret. Now, in the suffocating silence broken only by the distant howl of a coyote, Elena leaned close to his ear, her voice a barely audible whisper carried on the chill night air. "We're alone now, time to do what's necessary." The words hung like a vow, not of despair, but of a fierce resolve born from a lifetime of hardships she had thought she was escaping. If this opening has already tugged at your heartstrings, and if you believe in the power of kindness and second chances, please take a moment to like this video, drop a comment sharing your thoughts, share it with someone who needs a reminder of human resilience, and subscribe to the channel, Gentle Hearts, for more stories that celebrate the quiet strength within us all. Elena's journey to this moment had begun in the fog-shrouded streets of St. Petersburg, where the winters bit deeper than any wolf's fang, and poverty clung to her family like frost on a windowpane. Orphaned young and burdened with caring for her ailing grandmother, she had answered the advertisement in a tattered newspaper, seeking a mail-order bride for a widower in the American West, a man named Harlan who described himself as sturdy, God-fearing, and in need of a companion to tame the wild land he called home. His letters painted pictures of vast skies, fertile soil waiting to be coaxed into life, and a quiet existence far from the clamor of crowded tenements. Elena, with her calloused hands from years of scrubbing floors and her heart scarred by loss, saw in those words a glimmer of hope, a chance to rewrite her story. She sold her few possessions, bid farewell to the graves of her loved ones, and boarded a ship that tossed her across the Atlantic like a leaf in a storm, only to endure weeks on a rattling train that carried her deeper into an unfamiliar continent. Arrival in the dusty town of Willow Creek brought no fanfare. Harlan met her at the station, his face lined with the wear of 50 harsh years, his eyes kind but weary, holding a bouquet of wildflowers that wilted under the relentless sun. They exchanged vows in a one-room chapel, the preacher's voice echoing hollowly, and set off for the homestead, Harlan coughing intermittently, dismissing it as trail dust. The cabin, perched on a rise overlooking acres of untamed prairie, revealed itself as more a testament to struggle than prosperity. Harlan's first wife had died in childbirth a decade prior, leaving him to raise a son who had since ventured off to seek fortune in the gold fields, never to return. The land was parched from drought, the barn sagging under neglect, and debts to the bank in town loomed like gathering thunderclouds. That first evening, as Elena unpacked her meager trunk containing a faded photograph of her grandmother and a worn Bible, Harlan shared the truth over a meager supper of beans and cornbread. The farm was on the brink of foreclosure, his health failing from years of overwork, and he had sought a bride not just for love, but for help in salvaging what remained. Elena listened, her initial disappointment giving way to a quiet empathy. She had known men broken by life back home, and in Harlan's steady gaze, she saw not weakness, but a mirror of her own endurance. They spoke late into the night, sharing fragments of their pasts, the way his wife's laughter had once filled the cabin, the songs her grandmother sang to ward off the cold, and for the first time in years, Elena felt the stirrings of connection, a fragile bridge across the chasm of their differences. But fate, cruel and indifferent as the frontier winds, intervened before dawn could seal their budding bond. Harlan's cough worsened on the wagon trail, escalating into a delirium that forced Elena to drive the team herself, her hands blistering on the reins as she urged the horses onward. By the time they reached the cabin, he was barely conscious, murmuring apologies for the life he couldn't provide. She tended him through the night, brewing herbal teas from what little she knew of folk remedies, wiping his brow with cool cloths torn from her petticoat, but the fever raged unchecked, claiming him as the stars faded from the sky. Alone in the vast emptiness, Elena buried him behind the cabin under a cottonwood tree, her muscles aching from digging the grave with a shovel that felt heavier than her grief. The earth was unyielding, each spadeful a reminder of her isolation, no family, no friends, just the endless horizon mocking her naivety. Whispers of doubt crept in: return to town, beg for passage back east, admit defeat. But as she patted the last mound of dirt, those words escaped her lips again, a mantra against the void, fueling a determination to honor the man she had barely known by saving the land he had loved. The days that followed blurred into a relentless battle against the elements and her own inexperience. Elena rose before sunrise, her body protesting the unfamiliar labor as she mended fences splintered by windstorms, hauled water from a distant creek that trickled to a muddy stream in the drought, and wrestled with the plow that Harlan's old mule resisted with stubborn heaves. Blisters turned to calluses, her fair skin burned and freckled under the merciless sun, and nights brought exhaustion so profound she collapsed onto the bed still clothed, dreaming of the comforts she had left behind. The nearest neighbors, a family named the Thompsons 5 miles down the valley, offered cautious aid, a sack of seed corn, advice on crop rotation, but whispers in town painted her as an outsider, a foreign woman unfit for the harsh life, especially alone. The banker, Mr. Caldwell, rode out one afternoon, his suit ill-suited to the dust, demanding payment on the overdue loan with a leer that suggested alternatives she recoiled from. Rejection fueled her fire. She bartered eggs from the few chickens for tools in town, learned to shoot Harlan's rifle to ward off coyotes raiding the coop, and planted a garden with seed salvaged from withered plants, watering it painstakingly with buckets that left her back in knots. As weeks stretched into months, the isolation gnawed at Elena's spirit, manifesting in quiet moments of despair when she sat by the fire, staring at Harlan's empty chair, wondering if her whispers had been folly. Letters from her past life ceased, the world beyond the prairie felt like a faded memory. Yet, subtle shifts began to emerge. The mule, once defiant, responded to her gentle persistence, plowing straighter furrows that promised a harvest. Rain finally came in a torrential downpour, soaking the earth and awakening dormant seeds, turning the fields into a tentative green haze. The Thompsons' daughter, young Lizzie, ventured over on horseback, sharing stories of her own losses, a brother to fever, a crop to locusts, and in their shared silences, a friendship bloomed, easing the weight of solitude. Elena discovered Harlan's journal hidden in the loft, pages filled with his hopes for the land, his regrets over his absent son, and unexpectedly, tender entries about her arrival, describing her as a light in the gathering dark. Reading them by lantern light, tears blurring the ink, she felt a profound connection to the man she had lost, his words guiding her through doubts, urging her to persevere. Challenges mounted as winter approached, testing the limits of her resolve. A blizzard blanketed the land in snowdrifts that buried the paths, trapping her inside with dwindling supplies. Hunger clawed at her insides, the cold seeping through cracks in the walls like an unwelcome guest, and fever struck her too, a cruel echo of Harlan's fate. In delirium, she hallucinated voices, her grandmother scolding her for foolishness, Harlan's encouraging her to fight, and in those fevered hours, she confronted the depths of her pain, the accumulated losses that had shaped her into this resilient shell. Recovery came slowly, aided by Lizzie's family braving the storm to deliver broth and firewood, their act of kindness shattering the barriers of suspicion. Spring brought renewal, the crops Elena had nurtured yielded a modest bounty, enough to pay a portion of the debt and stock the pantry. Word spread in town of the widow who tamed the wild farm, drawing curious visitors, homesteaders seeking advice, a traveling preacher who blessed her fields, even Harlan's estranged son, drawn back by rumors, his face etched with remorse as he helped rebuild the barn. Through it all, Elena's whispers evolved into a silent creed, propelling her forward as she transformed the cabin into a haven, planting flowers by Harlan's grave and welcoming strays, both animal and human, who wandered the frontier in search of solace. She found love again, not in grand gestures, but in the steady companionship of a neighboring widower, drawn to her strength, their union a testament to second chances forged in adversity. The farm prospered, becoming a beacon for others facing ruin, and Elena, once a stranger in a strange land, became its quiet guardian, her story whispered around campfires as one of unyielding spirit. As this tale draws to a close, if Elena's journey of loss, struggle, and ultimate triumph has stirred something deep within you, perhaps a tear, a spark of hope, or a reminder of your own hidden strength, please honor that emotion by liking this video, leaving a comment with how it moved you, sharing it with a friend who needs inspiration, and subscribing to Gentle Hearts for more heartfelt narratives. Before we end, I'd love for you to comment the line, "We're alone now, time to do what's necessary." If this story reminded you of the power in facing life's necessities with courage,